when we're going to be joined by another really important student voice who's going to talk to us through our next phase, which is about communicating environmental science. So I hope you found the event so far interesting and stimulating.
Unfortunately, my education in environmental science has not always been this fantastic. And actually, one of my A-level science teachers was a climate denier, which is absolutely ridiculous. Especially, I'm studying it now. There's an overwhelming scientific consensus on the subject, so really silly. But I used to get emails from this teacher with articles about, why the data and the graphs were false and the projections were wrong, and it was all kind of faked. Really, I can only hope that those seeds of misinformation were only directed at me because I was quite vocal on the topic when I was 17, and that other less stubborn students weren't being influenced. But I tried to help this teacher understand, and we actually had a lot of conversations about it, probably really when I should have been studying chemistry. But whether I got anywhere with that is a bit of a different question. Like Liz was saying, I eventually founded this project called Teach the Teacher with students organising for sustainability. And Teach the Teacher supports young people to give workshops about climate change to their teachers. But it's actually a much, much wider problem. All the other science teachers in the UK are not climate deniers, I'm sure, but 70% of teachers actually do not feel adequately equipped to teach their students about the climate crisis. And 79% of secondary teachers say that they are not teaching about the ecological crisis in a meaningful or relevant way. And I'll just say that again. 70% of teachers do not feel adequately equipped to teach their students about the climate crisis, and 79% of secondary teachers say that they are not teaching about the ecological crisis in a meaningful or relevant way. And I think that's really shocking. Those are huge numbers. And actually, similarly, when we go and speak to young people about their experience of education, about the environment and sustainability, they're all saying similar things in that they didn't have the opportunity to learn about the environment or to engage in any sort of meaningful action on that. The challenges that I, as a young person, face in environmental education are really profound. A lot, if not most, of the young people that Will and I, that's the other youth focal point, the young people that we speak to, they don't know what green skills are. And they're under the impression that to have a green job, you have to work in agriculture or for a renewable company, despite, the diverse range actually of careers that's available beyond those traditional industries. So there's clearly this massive problem. Young people really, really want to know more about the environment. Actually, 68% of students say they want to know more about the environment, but they have no idea where to start. And they really actually don't even know what they need to learn. I visited a school recently in Manchester. I'm hoping to kind of go there again in June. And I had the privilege, really it was a privilege, to speak to a small group of students about the environment and about climate change. And it was really, really eye-opening. These students basically had been hand selected by the senior leadership team as the most eloquent, the most hardworking, and they knew basically next to nothing about climate change and the environment. This was a very, very diverse school. Most of the students' families live overseas in the global south. And we spoke about the fact that many of their families living in the global south were experiencing more and more extreme weather events. But none of those students could make the links between the science behind climate change and the current day observations. And actually, really, really shockingly for me, most of them struggled to differentiate between weather and climate. So this conversation, especially in light of my own experience with my science teacher, I found to be very unsettling. It highlights this huge disconnect between what students are learning and the critical knowledge and the skills that they need to understand the world around them. If education is not adequately addressing and communicating climate science, then the impact on our understanding and actually on society's future will be detrimental. And I think, specifically with this topic, the importance of effective climate education and effective communication in environmental science is really important. Communicating science not just about conveying facts for me. It's about inspiring action and fostering understanding, driving change. In the face of all of these environmental problems, we need more than just awareness. I think we need a well-informed, motivated student population, and specifically one that feels really ready to tackle this incredibly large challenge. And at the moment, it's just not the case. We, as scientists, consultants, educators, not only facilitators of knowledge, but also should be champions of sustainability. And as students like me and like my friends are asserting more and more their agency to climate action, I really feel that it's important that the torch needs to be passed on. But in what situation do we find ourselves? This torch that we're meant to be passing is more like a flickering flame. And the urgency of this situation demands students and young people and a new generation that is equipped to not just understand the science, but to grapple with its social, political, economic implications. Are we being prepared to face rising sea levels, but also, the potential for mass displacement and resource scarcity, and how are we going to navigate the misinformation campaigns around that, which is what is threatening progress? And coming on from that, this disconnect is not just a knowledge gap, it's actually one of preparedness as well. The consequences of inaction are no longer just abstract future threats. They're actually a lived reality for many, many people around the world. And education and science and the way that we're communicating that is not equipping the next generation with the tools that they need, not to just inherit what is happening, but to be able to navigate it fully as well. I often think about my climate denier teacher, actually, because what if instead he had been this champion for accurate and inspiring science education? How many more of my classmates and the people at my sixth form might have been inspired to pursue careers in environmental science, or to innovate, or to lead? I think it's not just enough to simply understand the science ourselves. We have to communicate it in ways that are clear and compelling and actionable, because only then can we ensure that my generation and the next, they're not being misled by deniers, and instead inspired by great educators who are able to actually convey the beauty of science and simultaneously the urgency of the situation. So given my experience with my teacher and the conversations that I've been having with those school children, the question that I want to leave you with, and hopefully the one that we'll be able to answer in the breakout groups, is this: how can we ensure that young people in education not only understand the challenges that we face in this environmental and ecological crisis, but are also equipped and motivated to overcome them?
Thank you, Jodie. That was incredibly powerful and impactful, and incredibly eloquent. So thank you very, very much for taking the time out to talk with us. I just feel very honoured that you came to speak to us. I'm very optimistic. If you're driving this forward, I think that's really positive for everybody. So thank you very, very much indeed.